Hello and welcome everyone to this fourth episode from the series of IATA Modern Airline Retailing webinars, focused this time on the transition to 100% offers and orders from a travel ecosystem point of view. My name is Anca Delocan. I've been with IATA since 2010 in several business verticals. Now I'm part of the distribution team working on the Dynamic Offers program. And today I am your webinar moderator and dialogue partner. So please feel free to send me your questions in the chat box, as we will keep some time at the end for answering Q&As. So why have we set up this webinar? Our goal is to share with you the findings of our joint IATA and Boston Consulting Group study, which is called Successful Airline Retailing Requires Industry Partnerships. This way, we hope to contribute to the industry momentum in the transition towards the end state with offers and orders, and raise the awareness across the entire travel ecosystem. To help me reach these goals, please allow me to introduce my guest speakers. I'll start with Marcello Cirelli, the principal from BCG, focused on the commercial topics in the airline industry and lead partner in our study. Welcome, Marcello. Pierre Galvin, senior director also from BCG, in charge of the airline industry knowledge and expert team. Welcome, Pierre. And to complete the picture, together with them, my colleague Olivier Ars from IATA, head of the distribution strategy. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining me. And just before we start, please allow me to briefly place this article in the context of modern airline retailing program. So the title of our research is pretty straightforward, as you can see. The study has been developed during 2023 and publicly released at the IATA World Passenger Symposium in October in Chicago, as well as published on both IATA and BCG websites. This study has obviously been conducted under the framework of the IATA Modern Airline Retailing Program, which in a nutshell is about our industry moving from a current legacy process-centric architecture to one that is omnichannel and customer-centric, and that relies on centralized offers and order management capabilities and data. The end state vision of this program is that airline will have their own retailing platforms from which all their sales channels will be managed via a single source of truth. And having said that, in order to move forward this end state, some important steps have been taken to support the industry and raise the level of awareness. So I'll briefly mention these steps, which I hope most of you are already familiar with. And for those that are not, please rest assured that together with the recording of this webinar, all relevant links will also be shared. Okay. So the first document I'm referring to is the business case for modern airline retailing. The second document, recently adopted as an IATA IP, is the business reference architecture, who in a nutshell describes how the future systems will be designed in terms of business capabilities in the end state of a pure world of offers and orders. The third document, released as well at the WPS in Chicago this year, is the IT provider readiness and airline transition pathways. And this document has also been presented and discussed more in depth a few weeks ago during the third episode of Modern Airline Retailing webinar series. And last but not least, the fourth document that concludes this series is our study, this one. Successful Airline Retailing Requires Industry Partnerships. So, as I mentioned already, this publication is the scope of our webinar today. And without further ado, I would like to start with you, Marcello, as this is the third consecutive year IATA and BCG collaborate on the topic of the end vision with offers and orders, but it's the first time we're expanding the scope of the engagement beyond just airlines. So can you please explain what was the trigger of this scope expansion and what was the methodology we have used to ensure the most accurate overview?
Sure. Thanks, Anka. So in the first 2 years that we collaborated, we focused a lot on the airline perspective. We tried to understand what was the value at stake, what were the investments required, and what was the roadmap for the airlines to achieve the ambition of 100% offers and orders. And we think this is in line with what the airlines have been doing themselves internally, which is to develop their capabilities, rethink their distribution strategy, start discussing how to reshape the IT landscape. But if we take a step back, we need to realize that the traveler, the airline customer, is looking at the end-to-end customer journey, interact with several different actors, not just the airline. And because airline retailing allow the airlines to enhance the customer experience, it doesn't make sense to do that just when the customer interacts with the airlines. It's important to ensure a consistent, smooth, and better customer experience across the end-to-end journey. So it's important that the airlines reach out to the ecosystem to make sure that they are following the same type of customer experience that the airlines have designed for their own touch points. And to do that, as you see here on the slide, we select a range of partners in the ecosystem that we believe are the most relevant ones when it comes to the retailing use cases. And we reached out, interviewed and surveyed these people, and they are CEOs, C-levels, VPs and directors, so senior people that work in these organizations to understand their perspective on the industry transition to airline retailing and share their thoughts and expectations from this work. So going through the list here that you see on the slide, we talked to over 20 people, and this includes the following players that you see on the slide. So sellers and distributors. So for example, OTAs, travel agencies, tour operators, TMCs, ground handlers and ground service providers, travel and non-travel partners. So for example, car rentals, hotels, and cruise lines. The IT vendors, the commercial IT vendors, operation IT vendors, and accounting IT vendors. And also, to a lesser extent, of course, regulatory bodies, just to make sure that this they have their point of view included in the study.
Thank you very much. A lot of people have been involved. So we've seen actually that there's a lot of stakeholders that needed to be involved in this study. So I'm looking at you, Olivier, and I'm asking, could you please give us a little bit more content around the challenges of the transition to modern airline retailing that brought up the need of having this discussion with all these value chain players?
Yes, so first maybe explain what is modern airline retailing, concept we've mentioned a number of times. So really this is about transitioning to the industry, the airlines, and then the rest of the value chain towards a full customer-centric process. And for modern airline retailing, we have three pillars. The number one is the digital identification, so providing identification to sellers, but also customer, leveraging verified credentials. Then we have the selling with offers. And selling with offers, I think for many people here in the webinar, this is associated with NDC, which is create the right offer, distribute it to the right customer, in particular with the right payment form. And then what is new is now that we have also fulfilling with order. And this is where we have a significant change versus the previous situation with NDC, because fulfilling with order means that for the industry, we are going to use orders. No more PNRs, e-ticket, EMDs, but a single identifier. And I think that's where is the challenge and where is also the great opportunity, is that we move from a situation where it was mostly an airline to seller interaction. For NDC, airlines were creating new offers, interacting with their sellers, and things would work less or more smoothly. Now with orders, we have a much wider engagement, because we are talking about processing orders towards the operations, the DCS. We are talking about orders to revenue counting. We are talking about orders with partners. So that's why we really need to engage the value chain, because we have very much expanded the scope of the players who need to be involved in that transformation.
Thank you very much, Olivier and Marcello. I think this highlights very well this overall context. And so now, if we move to the next question, keeping an eye on this challenging context, obviously, could I ask you, Pierre, where the various industry players from our ecosystem find themselves in this transformation process?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's a pretty big question in the sense that we have conducted a lot of interviews, as you have seen, and you can also see on the slide that there is a lot of dots to cover. So we have looked at the transformation according to 3 dimensions, right? First is we wanted to know if the players were aware of offer and order modern retailing. Then we wanted to see if they have an understanding, or maybe even their own understanding of the true impact for the airline and for the ecosystem. And finally, we also just ask how ready they are, what is the timeline, etc. And we have done that for every interviewee, right? So we will have, like, for system providers, commercial and accounting, sellers and distributors, travel partners, and ground services. So as you would imagine, in terms of awareness, it's overall pretty good, right? And I think that's also kudos to the work of IATA to make it very, spoken about. There are a lot of events, there's a lot of communication. We have seen across the board there is some understanding of an order, maybe less so when it comes to, of course, travel partners. But even when you speak to hotels, car rentals, sometimes you're surprised, right? I think we came in these interviews with maybe some ideas, preconceptions, and very often I was very surprised myself, right? I remember speaking, I don't know if it was hotels or rail, but they were saying, this is so cool what the airlines are doing, right? And that was very heartening to hear. Now on the ground ops and also on travel partners, there are also some players that never heard about it, right? Or maybe they have heard only about NDC. But it's I would not say it was a majority. I think even in ground handlers, ground service managers, most of them heard the word NDC. Maybe it was remote. One interesting point here is the fact that most of them didn't seem to hear it from the airline they work with, right? I mean, I don't remember a single of those interviews where the airline was the airline client of the ground handler was the one communicating about the change, right? Most of the time it was publications, conferences, etc. Moving to the understanding of the impact, of course, it's less advanced, right? And the system providers, I mean, they know it. They are now working on that for years and years. A lot of the system providers are developing solutions. They have looked at not only the positives, but also all the complexities that are attached to the transformation. And not only NDC, but of course also the offer and order system, right? For sellers and distributors, it's quite interesting, right? Because of course there is a good understanding of the offer side, right? I mean, NDC now, I think everybody knows. Everybody even knows the technical details about it. There are a lot of categories in this box, right? But we saw that pretty much everyone had a good understanding of this side of the equation. The other side, less so, right? And it's quite funny because it's not only you would think, people that didn't take the transition, but even the digital natives, right? Even the startups that have been created in this space to serve offer and order, they don't yet have this experience of the fulfillment, They don't have the experience of the scale, right? And they don't always know all the intricacies of what happens, when you have every possible scenario, every funny combination of seller, airline partners, etc. Right? So that's a place where, I mean, there's a lot of attention. I think a lot of players are really looking into it in great detail, but the understanding still has to be fully understood. travel partners and ground service operators, limited understanding, if any, right? The view, of course, especially in the ops, is that it's very much an airline thing, right? Some did not forcefully expect to have a role to play or to be impacted. It was interesting in the conversation that sometimes they would just start, during the interview thinking, oh yeah, but maybe for this process or for that process, we might need to train our agents, right? And it was starting to, I think, also immediately be apparent to them that there is an impact. But yeah, I think it's a pretty uncharted territory. Travel partners, usually they have heard about the word NDC transition, but not many have a clear understanding of what this means for the airline very concretely, right? I mean, of course, if you go to other travel parts like hotel, rail, etc., they don't know all the complexities that is behind the PSS, behind the fulfillment, etc. But even like closer partners like the caterers, yeah, that's not something that they have really a good understanding with. Readiness, yeah. Right? Yeah. So this one is the one that everybody wants to see, I guess. And I mean, there's not so much big surprise in the sense that, as we all know, there's not one solution that is fully ready yet, right? And that's why even the system providers who are, working very hard since many years, they are not there fully ready, right? They are progressing. There is definitely an acceleration. I think this year was very exciting. But yeah, there's also a way to go. And even when the solutions will be ready, the scalability will also, require more and more work, right? So yeah, it's a journey. When it comes to sellers and distributors, what we have observed is that there is a pretty significant gap, right, between, of course, the digital natives that are just 100% created for this purpose, and of course, their pipeline is already pretty ready in some places, especially the booking sites often, and the legacy players who have not yet taken the move, right, waiting for the right moment, etc. Right, and yeah, it's a pretty sizable transformation, I think, when you have a large operation, when you have an efficient operation, a lot of agents. Of course, that's a bit early for those players. You might be surprised to see the travel partners as being yellow. I mean, maybe it's not as yellow as sellers and distributors. What we found extremely interesting in these interviews is to realize that other parts of the travel ecosystem had similar plans. You speak to rail companies, they develop platforms to integrate, bike trips, maybe for sustainability, to integrate ferries, and factually it's almost like offer and order, right? And even more so, we found there was a very big appetite, right? And this is like every partner, right? Maybe hotel, car rental, or even like catering, right? It really felt like everybody was excited about this change and seeing an opportunity to increase the collaboration with the airline, and even more so to significantly improve the customer experience. Ground services is definitely not a priority for them right now, right? As said, they don't forcefully have the perception that it's going to impact their business, and I don't remember speaking to one that had really a roadmap around that, right? So that's again pretty new.
Thank you, Pierre. Anyone would like to jump on this call, on this question, sorry, to complement what Pierre just said?
Yep, yeah, I think, please, thanks, Anka. I joined all the conversation with all the players. It was really fascinating. Something I really noticed is the appetite for cooperation, for collaboration. In particular, if you think about hotels, if you think about train, people had the same challenges. So a pretty legacy technology, which needs to be modernized. Then the need to exchange customer data if the customer consents, and views about many use cases. I mean, you will always say if your flight is delayed, then you need to inform the hotel. But for example, car rental, they said, well, the other way around, if the car had an accident, fortunately, then need to inform the airline that customer is delayed, etc. So people were really seeing that the notion of order, the notion of having the information flowing between the players is fantastic for the customer experience.
Thank you. Thank you. So we see that there are several shades of yellow, as Pierre mentioned just before. Thank you, both of you, for describing this picture. But now, if I would go one step forward to complement what has just been described, could you, Marcello, maybe share with us what are some of the key concrete findings from the interviews that we had with the individual value chain players?
Yes, sure. And this was a very important part of the conversations that we had with the airlines, stakeholders and partners, because many of them were questioning why should I invest to do something that may or may not benefit me, or I still don't know clearly what is the benefit. So the overall feeling that we got from most of the participants is that the business case for the partners is not yet very clear. And we think this is normal and natural, because for some airlines, it's still not clear. Then, of course, for the partners, it will come in a later stage. But what we also saw is that with offers and orders and the retailing concept, airlines will have more ownership of their commercial strategy, and they will have more flexibility to decide in their own terms what they want to share with the partners, with which partners, and what they want to keep for themselves. I think we are seeing some of these movements now with some recent NDC announcements. So we think this is something that is going to continue to happen. And here on the slide, we share some anecdotal evidence that we collect from the interviews with some partners to get their perspective, right? So starting, for example, from an OTA that says, look, we want to grow the pie for both the airlines and ourselves, right? So we want the airlines to give us more products, more ancillaries, better content, and so on. Some airlines are receptive, some are not interested, which means some airlines are maybe not ready to share with the OTAs, or maybe thinking that they may keep the most innovative stuff initially to themselves. The hotel CIO said that they would love to partner with the airlines to give the guests the best experience, because their clients are the same. But he said in his experience, airlines tend to prefer to keep that innovation on their own website. Maybe eventually in a second stage, they will be shared with the partners. Two comments from TMCs. We know that they have been also very vocal about many of these topics and the transformation. So according to these two people that we interviewed, first one said that they use GDS 99% of the time, and it just works, right? It's a well-oiled machine. It has worked for many years. It will continue to work. NDC at this stage, the way they see is something that is disturbing a machine that is currently working well. The other TMC on the bottom left said that their cost structure is primarily based on servicing. So every inefficiency that NDC currently still brings to the servicing process adds to their cost structure, and they are not super satisfied with that. We know that much progress has been made already, but they're still not 100% there. Then the view of the DCS, the opportunity, I think we have heard this, many airlines have discussed this for many years, right? To increase the sales of ancillaries at the airport, during check-in, during boarding, and even on board. He still thinks this is difficult to imagine, right? But we know that NDC offers and orders allow these kind of things to be much more easily implemented, but the industry themselves, they still don't see tangible and concrete examples. And the last one, the tour operator, is like, maybe in the future we are going to change and switch to NDC. Right now, we don't see the business case to do all the changes and investment required, right? So this gives a picture that we observed across the entire ecosystem that the airlines need to work with the partners to help them understanding what is the business case for the partners, and potentially building things that will become part of the business case, right? So launching products that are dedicated to the DCS or to the TMCs and so on. So there's a lot of work and a lot of partnership. I think this is why we chose the title of the publication, that the success of this journey will depend on the industry partnerships, because this is what we are seeing and hearing from the ecosystem.
Thank you very much, Marcello. Would you, anyone of you, Olivier, maybe you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, actually, from IATA perspective, I think for us it's really important to listen to the value chain. In the early stage of NDC, maybe there wasn't enough, discussion with all the value chain and the partners. And when we listen, so we see where we are with NDC, what is working, what still needs to be improved. Then we also measure let's say the challenges of moving to one order, moving also to digital identity, and somehow we realize, transformation, this is about people, about technology, about processes. So people need to have a different mindset. We need to invest in technology. We need to have new processes, and it's important to really think in terms of use cases. But really, ultimately, we see it's about communication. We need to explain where this is going, why. We need to provide education, and that's the best way to embark everybody.
Absolutely, you're totally right. I think you have slightly anticipated our next question, which is, if you think of everything that we have just said and has been expressed so far, is the momentum here for everyone? Can we actually say that in this retailing journey there is an alignment in the ecosystem between all the value chain players and the airlines? Olivier, would you continue with?
Yes. So here on the slide we show two journey with two parts. One is the journey to the offers, and the second one is orders. So on the offers, it started a number of years ago. Key milestones have been to redefine channel strategy, what is modern channel, what remains under the de facto, the traditional technology or messaging technology. Then there's modernization of IT systems, in particular the revenue management system, the offer management, implement dynamic bundling, and also indefinite price curves. Then now also airlines are more and more introducing new products. So for that part, I would say in general, the awareness, the understanding, and the cooperation with the trade now is working well. There's been lately two focus. One is fine-tune servicing, and sometimes it gets worse before it gets better, but ultimately it really gets better with fully automated servicing. The second one is interlining, which is still somehow work in progress. So I'd say in general, yes, on that one, great alignment. On the journey to orders, we've heard that with the presentation from Pierre earlier, it's still very early stage, but I think what we are going to is that really people see the challenges we have with today's legacy technology. And for me, the most impressive is the quality of the discussion we have with IT providers. We invited 15 of them in Geneva at IATA with the airlines to discuss about their plans for the future. And it was super impressive to see how this is top of mind of the IT players. They are investing, they have ideas about the future. And here, for the audience here, this is first an airline exercise, because this is about the future platforms. We are moving to what is called PSS 2.0, or offer and order centric commercial IT. And then next to that, we are looking at the interdependencies with all the parties around. Sometimes it's kind of easy. Maybe many sellers already process orders. Sometimes it's much more complex, and we have to look in details. There's been massive focus in 2023 on the future of financial processes. And at the moment, we have really kicked off all the processes in the operation, where we don't only have orders, but we also have one ID, which is the customer identification. And so it's really a complex and overall transformation, which is done for the good of the industry, but primarily with the customer in mind, because we are talking about much more seamless experience from a customer perspective.
And to maybe add on Olivier,
Sure.
there are places that have maybe made less progress or don't even yet have a plan, right, as we have seen. But at the same time, there is a lot of appetite, right? And I think we all left those interviews very energized. Even like areas that you would not forcefully think from top of head, you speak with caterers, and they were very excited about what this tech can enable, right? And I think that was really eye-opening. They were sharing that with more of this open form of bookings and the capacity to share more information, there was amazing opportunity to personalize the food better, and that's important, right? As part of the experience, for me at least, it is. And it's that today this is a discussion that is not happening at all, right? And so I think there's a couple of those places where there are some partners that are really looking forward for this type of opportunities to have this type of discussions, right? So yeah, that.
Thank you. So I understand that if we, let's say, take a bird-eye view at other industries out there that have undergone similar transformation, could we say that there are any best practices that we could potentially keep and that could inspire our travel industry? And I don't know, to what extent do you think we can learn or apply them in our travel environment? I'm looking at Marcello maybe to answer this one. Do you have any thoughts?
Sure. Yes, and this is something interesting, right? Because I think many of us here have worked in the airline industry for most of our careers, so we are pretty much focused on our sector and airlines specifically. And sometimes we think that what the airline industry is trying to do is something very unique that no other industry has ever done before. And in one sense, it's true, right? I cannot think of another industry that has the same type of system landscape and innovated so early on with the global distribution system and other technologies. But there are many other industries that they face similar digitization and technological transformation that the airline industry is trying to accomplish right now. So we looked at the experts around BCG to try to understand first which industries could make sense to have a deeper look, and then what could be potential learnings and insights that we could extract from these industries and replicate to the airlines. And we basically focus on three sectors. First, telecommunication, second, banking, and third, automotive. So to give you a very brief view of these sectors, I think telecommunication is something that everyone here is aware as customers, that every few years we change technology from first 2G to 3G, 4G, and now we are in 5G, right? So every few years, the industry needs to transform completely the technology, replace all the equipment, all the machinery, and change a lot of the process that they have. And how can they do that, right? If it's something that is cyclical and they have to do quite often. And what we learned is that there is an industry organization similar to what IATA represents to the airline industry that creates the roadmap, sets the technological standards, and basically brings the industry along every time there is a new technology wave coming. Second, in the banking, is a heavily regulated industry, as it is the case of airlines. And it's also an industry that, similarly to airlines, face a lot of competition from new entries, from digital native players, startups that trying to break through this space and create some sort of disintermediation versus the original traditional bankers. And what we see here is that for the regulation aspect is very important, right? It's very common to see the regulator setting up a law or mandate. Take, for example, the case of open banking in the UK, in Europe, and now starting in the US, where traditional banks are required to share information with other players. And this also requires a lot of investments and changes in the technology stack and also in the internal processes. And the regulation is something that accelerates this type of change because it forces everyone to be ready by a certain date and time and kind of levels the playing field for all the players in the sector. In the case of automotive, we are focusing in particular in the case of electric vehicles because the case I think of Tesla that is more broadly known is a very interesting one, right? Because they start very small and with something that customers had kind of a bad perception, and the electric car had a bad reputation among car aficionados, that it was not as powerful, it was not as traditional, and not as, let's say, useful as the traditional cars. And just a few years later, they were able to change that perception and make the electric car something that is desirable, appealing, and even cool for a much broader audience. And they were able to create a competitive advantage in a leadership that still today positions Tesla as a front runner and a leader in the sector. And they have an advantage that might take years for the traditional automakers to catch up. So this is a bit of context of what we learned. So if we had to summarize into 3 lessons that we could share with the airline industry, is the first is that I think for now everyone shouldn't expect a big bang transformation, right? It's not going to be plugging off the old technology, plugging on the new one from one day to the other. It's going to happen throughout a long period of time. There will be a hybrid period in which both old world and new world will have to coexist and will have to interact. And for the airlines, the implication is that potentially the costs of operating these 2 systems will be higher during this period. And this is the case, for example, for telecommunications, for banking, because they don't shut down the old technology immediately. They need to keep them up and running for some time. The second is the possibility of having accelerating mechanisms as catalysts to a transformation. So in the case of banking, the regulation, the laws, we could think some mandates or even standards that are industry driven. They help the industry to go at more or less at the same pace, not having some players that are too fast and others that are too slow. And it might make sense to make those players that are either too small to accelerate in the same pace as the large ones, and also or may not be so interested in making sure that they move with a certain speed and get there in a time frame that is reasonable for the industry. And the third one is that there is potential to get first front runner advantages. Of course, it's difficult for an airline to gain ground in areas that they don't cover, right? So it's more difficult for an airline to be, let's say, a very strong leadership position in a widespread area. But we think that innovative players, and could be airlines, but if the airlines don't move and don't act, it's probably going to be some partners that are more agile, more digital native, and more technology savvy, that will seize the opportunity of offering orders first, will get the possibility to capture more share, more value, and then it will take time for the other players to catch up. So I think this gives a overall view of the learnings that we get, and we think there are good, important lessons for the airlines that they could
Absolutely, you're totally right. And stay with me, please, because moving from key learnings to what would be the important call to action points, I would like to ask also you if you can go ahead and detail for us on these findings for a path moving forward.
Yes, sure. So we identify 5 actions. The first one is what we are calling avoid creating the new legacy, right? So here the idea is design the new IT landscape and the new processes to fit your strategy and not the other way around, right? As it is with legacy technology. The second one is adopt practice from other industries. There are the examples that we learned from the previous page, but ideally from consumer-facing industries that have advanced e-commerce. There's a lot of ideas and techniques that airlines can extract from. Third is drive internal change. We always hit this button. Airlines need to get the CEO involved to balance the views of the commercial organization, the IT organization, and also to bring people into the airline organization that potentially have a different background, that is not an airline industry veteran, but comes from another sector like technology or other consumer-facing industries that can bring a fresh air with new perspectives and help the internal organization see things differently than they do today. Fourth is considering accelerating mechanisms. This is something that, of course, needs to be discussed with a very large group and with a very deep level of detail. But it's something that could make sense or not for the industry to ensure the transition happens in a time frame that is not too long. And finally, the fifth point is innovate to keep strong relationships. This view is that we believe that one scenario that could happen is that some leading airlines partner with their main stakeholders and create something unique to move into offers and orders. But we also think that if airlines don't innovate, there will be even more risk of disintermediation than what we already see today, because there are players that are more agile, that are faster, they are already digitally enabled, and they will continue to gain market share and squeeze the airlines if the airlines don't get into the same level of competition from a product and customer experience perspective.
Thank you very much. And just quickly, if I would like to ask Olivier, if you do have anything to add on what Marcello just commented.
Yes, on item number 4, the consider accelerating mechanism. I think people very often have in mind a kind of mandate, and it is not on the table at the moment. We believe it's too early for the industry. We need a critical mass of airlines who are moving further. So at this stage, there is no plan for a mandate at this stage.
If I might also jump in.
Yes.
Sorry, okay.
No, go.
So no, I will re-emphasize the point of innovation. I think we are facing an amazing disruption, right? And at BCG we like strategy, we like big transformations like that, and many industries are looking for this type of disruption, right? So you might wonder, why is it happening here in the airline? And the answer might be something like, we were ahead of time 20 years ago. We have developed amazing systems, and we have maybe accumulated a little bit of depth over the couple of last years versus where tech was going in other places. There might be also other reasons, right, around the very nature of what airlines do. But the fact is, we have this big opportunity now, right? And I think it's absolutely exhilarating to discuss with the partners from airlines on what this can mean for the customer experience, right? There's really some truly wow transformation upcoming, and so for me, if there was one thing that I would really highlight, is this point 5, right? Probably for airlines alone, it doesn't bring as much impact as if you can partner with either one of your direct partners, maybe your caterer. I mean, this is a small example, or your the next OTA, or maybe working with hotels, car rental, to really transform the experience of traveling. And yeah, that's where I would like to close this one.
Yes, because I think we're slightly running out of time, but I would still like to keep a few questions coming from the audience, because we have received some questions, and with this slide, I think we have concluded the preliminary line of questioning. So if I look at the chat box, and I would take one question that just came in, it says, now that we see the industry awareness and readiness, how long will this take and how complex is it? Anyone would like to jump on this question? Give an answer?
Okay, I can try. Well, very difficult. How long and how complex? I think complexity will depend on the players. Certainly start with the airlines, because as I said previously, they have to change their platforms. Now they have IT providers to help them. But certainly we will see a wave of RFIs, RFPs for new offer and order management systems. For the rest of the players, we don't completely know. I think for the sellers it should be okay. For ground handlers, for DCS providers, there's work ongoing to identify exactly the gaps. That should be a key focus in 2024. Now, how long does it take? I think there's a clear consensus that it's a medium to long-term transition, meaning that you don't change such a landscape overnight. On one side, we have to do it. On the other side is giving the number of years. I remember that last year there was some kind of rumor that we said it must be 100% by 2030. No, we need to have the standards in place. We need to have the technology in place. So we need to have everything in place to achieve 100%. But it's not a mandate. It's just an aspiration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm looking at another question that we can link to this one. If there are any next steps, any clear next steps that
yeah
could,
yeah. So let me take this one maybe, Olivier, and also to add on what you what you just said, right? Because yeah, I think there's also a question of, you know, where do you define what is finished, right? There's a lot of things that are happening right now. I mean, you can see it in the news. There is significant progress, as we've said. The orders, the offer side, sorry, the NDC transition. I mean, this has been progressing very fast. Also, you know, there are amazing things which are cooking here and there, and then if you look at the bigger picture, right? Maybe it's also a question of what are we aiming for, right? Because if it's only about having the platform, the flow, yeah, I mean, as we said, you know, 2030, maybe earlier than that. But when it's about like transforming the customer experience, I think it's you know, it's going to be a continuous journey. I mean, there are so many opportunities which are being opened with this transformation. And that's where I think come the next step. I think my recommendation for next step is to look at the business case and those opportunities. So to define something which is future proof, right? If we come to systems that we are going to use for the next 10 years or 20 years, it's better that it's geared for a long haul, right?
Yeah, and very quickly to complement that, Pierre, I fully agree. In BCG, we are very much value driven, right? So I think the next step is whatever can generate most value in the shortest amount of time. So the answer will depend for each airline, but focus on the value, focus on value creation on the business case, and move things from there. I think this is the correct next step.
Absolutely. And conscious of the time, I would just take last one because I find it really important, and I would like if you can just give your thoughts, the three of you. How important is the role of partners in this transformation process?
It's very, how important are partners? They are critical, no? I think it's a very kind of very broad question, but yeah, in general, I think the whole webinar today is just to show that we are in industry with interoperability, with interconnection between players, airlines, sellers, aggregators, then all the operations. And so now we have also interlining, changing to Certia, which is the new way to interline between suppliers, airline or non-airlines, and all of these players, they can create value together for the customer. So they are just essential, crucial. Anything to add, Marcelo?
No, definitely they are critical. I mean, also in the interviews, sometimes we realize certain things, right? For example, if you want to be able to distribute your offers also at the ground at the airport, you need to train your agents. And we are talking about thousands of agents. You know, it's not forcefully easy to make them adopt a new system. So yeah, I think it's not a bad idea to start having those discussions with the supply chain even soon, right? Because they are critical. And for really transforming the customer experience, they are also in the center. Let's say you want to use the improved data exchange capabilities that is brought by this transformation, and you want to offer car pickup upon landing, right? So customer lands, doesn't need to go wait at the car rental kiosk, but you can directly enter the car with a mobile phone. Or, I mean, this requires to just work together, right? So yeah. I think most of the value, I mean, that's maybe more my point of view, but a large part of the value will come from those partnerships.
Absolutely. Communication and partners are utmost importance. Now, looking at the time, I would like to thank you all for answering these questions, and I would like to conclude that from the discussions that we have and that we had so far, and from our study, if we look at the entire ecosystem, meaning the value chain players and the airlines all together, we understand that while on the airline side, the momentum is here and the attention of the C-levels is growing, and so is the support for the transition and the investment into the new technologies to support this transition. On the value chain players, on the other hand, the level of awareness and understanding and support are somewhat still lagging behind. And from our study, as well as from what you have just expressed, I think the path is far from being smooth, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, if I may say so. So with this, I would like to address a big thank you to all of you, my guest speakers, for your participation in this webinar. And on behalf of all of us, I would like to thank everyone for attending this webinar. And I would like to encourage you to scan this QR code to read the full article and discover also other relevant documents that we have referred to during our webinar. So with this, I would like to say thank you, stay in touch, and see you soon. Bye-bye.